Getting more into your actual paintings. Some of your paintings, like Playground #2, focus on groups of people who play in park scenes to counteract societal animosity. Can you elaborate on how you select your subjects and the stories you aim to tell through these scenes? How do you approach representing diverse groups of people in your paintings, and what techniques do you use to capture the essence of different cultures and background?
Well, the second part of that question, I really don't even think about. I don't think about cultures and backgrounds. It's purely visual for me, and also it's intuitive. So I approach any subject through a sense of intuitive calling and pull, if you will, if you will, a pull to the subject. And we all know, unless you're hiding in the rock, that our culture is at odds with each other. It's very divisive and very nasty, and both on the left and the right, you see it a real divisive, nasty intolerance on both ends. You know, the the people in power are especially nasty. Our former administration here was the terrible one, and in former president, and
Mhm.
and and it's this autocratic authoritarian nastiness really does wear down on you, and it's all over the world. This populist demagogic um nastiness, that is very similar to what the world was going through in the 1930s. I wasn't around in the 1930s, of course, but there was that same kind of attitude in the world that democracy is really not good, and autocracy and the strong man is really better. And so you had this world that was facing a real existential crisis of freedom by autocratic regimes. And of course, when you go down that route, any leader can make anybody a monster.
Yeah.
And we now are living at a time where a lot of people feel comfortable being monsters.
Hmm.
And what that means in my mind is when you feel like you're being given license to be a monster, well, then you can be a monster to people who are other, and what does that mean? Well, you name it. I mean, you can be a monster to people who are a different color skin, a different religion, a different gender, a different sexual orientation, a different anything that you fill in different, and you can attack them. And we're living through this. I mean, this is something that we're going through, and it's not going to be over tomorrow.
Hmm.
It's going to last. It's going to last for a while, unfortunately. So
Unfortunately.
what do you do as a painter? What do you do as an artist? Um, I think creative people are extremely sensitive people. I am, and I know I'm not the only one. So, what do you do as a creative? Um, do you paint political paintings that speak to the political unrest directly, or do you paint things that are completely, totally alien to the unrest? Like painting beauty, you certainly can paint beauty.
Hmm.
Um, you know, um, so I felt like a strong inclination to be in this past few years to be painting people, and people who were, either portraits of people or people in groups who aren't necessarily family members, but strangers, just doing common everyday things that are pleasurable.
Hmm. To show the
Parks is being in parks is a pleasurable thing. If you observe people in parks, I mean, you don't get any sense of where of the turmoil that they're in. They're enjoying nature, they're enjoying light and air, they're enjoying their children, they're enjoying watching people watching.
yes.
So I was attracted to that. Or open air markets. I mean, why do people go to open air markets? Well, it's a pleasurable thing. You're
Hmm.
bumping shoulder to shoulder with people and watching things and looking at color and buying things, and it's pleasurable.
Yes.
Or going into a concert. Why do people go to concerts? You're packed with all these people. Well, it's a pleasurable thing. So I enjoy looking at that and thinking to myself, well, maybe I can paint this.
Hmm.
So it starts off with a drawing. So I start doing drawings on location. And then from the drawings, if I like them, I'll do bigger drawings and then I'll do watercolors. And then if I like that particular piece, I start looking at, I always have stretched canvases sitting around. So I'm looking at my stretched canvases thinking, I guess that painting could look good on that big canvas, and that's how it'll go. So um, go from a drawing to a watercolor to now then not then a big painting. So then I'll use these studies and I'll start to sketch out on the canvas and then paint it, fill it in. Then if the canvas is too big, I'll work from imagination, or um, if it's just big enough that I can manage going outside, I'll take the whole canvas and go right on location and paint using the color that I see, and then bringing it back into the studio and then painting from memory, and that's how it happens.
Wow, that's great. I love hearing about just the small, beautiful acts of that is just humanity, and just even the smallest thing can be the best thing that you see or that you paint. It's really interesting to hear about.
Hmm.
You kind of already talked maybe a little bit of how, or I'm not sure if this might be the answer, but you talk about how you sometimes just paint the things that are just like pleasurable in life or just simple things. Some of your more like still life paintings with subjects that aren't really necessarily doing an action. For example, still life with people walking by, has a man staring at some seashells, or the empty store, which just has a woman sitting on her chair. I think it's at a might be a nine sit facing west. Can you walk through how you would approach those paintings artistically, or what they're kind
Well,
of
still, yeah,
leaving?
some painters are exclusively still life painters. Some painters are exclusively landscape painters. Some painters are exclusively uh, figurative painters or portrait painters. I tend to kind of vacillate between all three. I will sometimes really get hooked into still life, and I'll paint two or three still lifes. Um, and then sometimes I want to paint singular figures. I'll paint, a series of paintings of people just by themselves in a space. Um, those two paintings you're talking about, the one painting of the girl sitting in the store, it was a store that was opening up from COVID, right when things were opening up. So she and her family owned that store. It's their family store. And so when things were starting to open up, I would go into the store and look in the space and, just to support them and patronize their store. But then I looked at the space and I looked outside and I thought, well, they were really cool if I could just paint her sitting, looking one way and then looking out the windows the other way. So I just like that dichotomy of her looking one way and then me looking out.
Yes.
So I asked her to pose and she was perfectly happy doing that. So I set up my easel and painted right from observation. And she sat there for, I think she sat 4 sittings after school. I painted her, and then when I was done with her, I painted the background and painted outside, looking outside, and some of the, I think there's on the right there's stuffed animals and cards and a
Yes.
greeting cards. They had a novel. The store is closed now, but it was a novelty store of all kinds of knickknacks and stationery and toys and such.
Wow.
And with the still life, I like painting still life just on its own, but then sometimes I like putting figures around still life. It's kind of interesting. So I've painted paintings with a still life, and then my wife comes in and sits down, and I say, "Oh, you're going to be in that painting." So I put her in. So in this particular still life, I put a mirror behind the still life so I could see myself. And then I could also see, I set it up in my porch so I could see people walking in the background. I live in Highland Park is a walking community. So um, there are people always walking around. It's a very small yards, close together houses, and people are always walking. So I could see people walking while I'm looking at the still life. So I incorporated that with that picture, and the idea. I guess there's no idea other than it's visual. I just enjoyed the space of looking at things close up, but also this activity of life around, that kind of dichotomy of of outside the outside surroundings that are somehow filling in this living space, and in the center of the living space are these objects. I didn't again, I don't think about these things.
Yes.
They
Mhm.
happen. They happen organically. And some painters are different. Other painters, they think through the whole thing and it's all figured out. I happen to be not that kind of painter. I'm intuitive at pull. I go through a series of pulls. I'll be pulled to a subject, and then the subject pulls me as I evolve the subject, and I say, "Oh, wow, look at that!" And it can change too. I can add things, subtract things.
Yes.
Um, so it's not really fixed until it's fixed.
Mhm.
So it tells you. Sounds crazy, but yeah, maybe that's just that's the process.
Doesn't sound crazy. It's your process. So
Yeah.
sense. A lot of your paintings are often bathed in light and snow. How do you use color and light to enhance the sense of unity and harmony in your scenes?
We don't have much snow anymore. Have you noticed? So when we do have snow, it's just delightful. Looking at snow, it's like a magic.
Mhm.
So that particular snowstorm, I just went out walking, and Highland Park. There's two parks. There's one park behind me, the one going that way, and then there's one park that way. So it's a sort of the park is down in a ravine by the river, and the town is up a little bit higher. So walking towards the park, you're up on a ridge looking down. And I knew that I was going to see something that was really visually beautiful. So I walked down to the park and I looked, and it was a very beautiful scene of this hill and these children sledding down the hill.
Yeah.
So the whole thing was just something I just had to paint. So I did a large Conti crayon drawing from my van, looking at it and studying it. And then when I was home, I just blew it up into a painting, and I started to manipulate the color and work of the snow painting. And I would go outside and look at how light interacted with snow and look at all the blue. You see a lot of blue in snow when the
Yes.
sun is out. The shadows are blue or indigo, sometimes violet. And yeah, it's just a beautiful thing. So
Beautiful.
um
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I wish it snowed a little more because it's just great to look at, right? It's so beautiful.
I feel like in New York, snows a lot of
Huh?
the time. I feel like it snows a lot of the time.
Snow in New York? It used to.
Does it
We
not anymore? I feel like it
Not
usually.
really. I haven't looked at the data, but I think maybe if you go north, there's some snowstorms. I mean, near Buffalo, there still can be a lot of snow.
Yes.
But
Definitely here north.
if you look at the Adirondacks, snow's been pretty stingy.
Mhm.
I mean, we're in global warming.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true.
So
Well, it works out for getting a warmer spring sometimes.
yeah, well, thankfully, the spring is not too hot yet.
Not too hot. No.
It's been a very slow,
Hmm.
lovely spring.
Yes.
So I'm grateful for that. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Moving on to, we only have a few more questions left. These are more of our closing questions.
yeah.
With how your style has evolved over the years, for the years that you've been a painter, um, how has your style and approach to figurative painting changed since you were younger? And what factors have driven these changes? What are some lessons you've learned over your years of painting?
Well, I mean, painting is a very slow, for me anyway, it's a very slow progression. You learn it through a lot of work and a lot of errors and a lot of messes and a lot of mistakes or a lot of things you're not satisfied with. And you're pulled into something. And we're influenced by the stuff that we like to look at. And I love looking at great painting. And, uh, our serious painters, are looking at great painting all the time, and they're saying, "God, I wish I could paint like this." And they're, you know, I can give you a list of painters that I've looked at, and I look at. Some I go to again and again, and some I go back and I go forth. I love Manet, I love Cezanne, I love Titian, I love Bruegel, um, I love Velázquez, I love Rembrandt.
Yes.
There are all these great artists. I love the Ashcan school, the American school, the Ashcan
Mhm.
school. I love them. I love George Bellows. Um, I love John Singer Sargent. I love Winslow Homer. Uh, there are these painters that I look at again and again, and when I look at their paintings, I got a dream about painting like that. So, I think that as I've studied reproductions and looked and looked and looked, the transitions and the subtleties and the nuances that I see in those paintings have finally come into my paintings, but it's been very hard to get there. You
Mhm.
know, maybe years past I could do maybe 10 paintings in like one, but now I seem to be more consistent. I also have to say I love Bonnard. I love Bonnard. I love Vuillard.
Yes.
They're more colorists, strong
Mhm.
color.
Mhm.
But I love color. I love color. So uh somehow all these influences are, they come into you, they come into your work, and they make their way in somehow in a variety of ways. Maybe the drawing, the linear quality of one artist will come through more, the painterliness, the brushiness
Yes.
of
Hmm.
another, the subtle transitions of another, the color of another. And somehow it all mixes in and it becomes you, we're all are individuals and we all have our own take, which is completely unique. And, you know, um, no one can draw like anybody else. Nobody can paint like anybody else. Nobody can make color or
Hmm.
see color like anybody else. Some people see totally different colors. Some people who are color blind see beautiful color that people who see color can't see.
Yes. Hmm.
It's strange. So all these influences have come into my work, and I feel that I am less inhibited than I used to be. I feel like I'm listening
Hmm.
more to my these intuitive pulls and impulses more and questioning them less.
Yeah.
I feel that my intuition is right, and
Yes.
I'm not doubting my intuition the way I used to. I used to have these intuitive thoughts and think, oh, man, that's kind of silly. I don't really say that anymore.
You're not
In fact,
overanalyzing.
I'm not, and I'm not saying anything is silly.
Hmm.
And so uh, I feel that my work has evolved in that I think and composition is a very, very important thing. I think my compositions were not as um, perhaps not as tight as they are now. I think my compositions are tighter, if that means anything. I think that the shapes are the integration of background and middle ground and figures and negative space. All those things are sort of like just more confident, I think.
More confident.
I think so. Yeah.
In a way that is like the figure, they're more defined from each other. They're more separate from each other in the way that you're painting,
Yeah,
or
I think so. I think it's the figures are I think are the drawing of the figures might be better.
hmm.
Um, the spaces in between the figures, that negative space seems to be more meaningful. Um, the airy quality that happens, the atmospheric quality that happens between and in between and in an environment seems to be coming through. These are things I've always wanted in
Yeah.
my paintings that I haven't been able to achieve, and they're starting to come in more consistently.
Hmm.
I think the color is I'm more and more of a colorist, and I'm getting the color that I want to get.
Hmm.
Um, and I seem to be less fussy about it. And just if the color is strong, and maybe even a little out there, I leave it.
Hmm. So it
You
doesn't
know,
necessarily have to be realistic color. It could be
yeah, I don't. It's a
real.
painting.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's a painting. So the color is it's personal.
Hmm.
And and yeah, I mean, I see so many different qualities and vibrations of color. Are those vibrations of color really what I see, or are they what are they there, or something that I feel as I don't know, but it feels right to me. It feels like it's real. There's also another element that is very true, at least with my work, and that's there is a spiritual invisible reality, another realm that is not visible empirically. We see this apple, for example, or we see that bowl of fruit, or we see that head of the figure. But there's another reality. There's another reality. The reality is a spiritual reality that's a vibration that is very much as real as that as the physical dimensional thing that we're seeing. And
Yes.
that energy, that spiritual energy, that force of life is everywhere. And I feel this and I see it, and it's incorporated in my work somehow. It's coming into my work.
Hmm.
There's an animation that is there, an animation of life that is a spiritual thing. I think it's a spiritual thing.
Yes.
That's how
Hmm.
that's how I phrase it.
Yes.
Because it's not empirical. You can't measure it, you can't define it, you can't put it in the box, you can't it's it is an ineffable, real thing that's a part of this world, but also a part of the other realm, the invisible,
Hmm.
the spiritual realm.
Yes. Hmm. It reminds me of when you were talking about your visit to the Met and how some of these paintings just you couldn't describe. You it, like left you physically speechless.
That's right.
That's what you're describing now is kind of leaving you speechless as well. Maybe you've like, achieved that. I don't want to use the word thing, but just that essence with your paintings.
I think
Um,
any quality artwork, the thing that differentiates art with a picture that might be commercial or well done or whatever is when you see something that's well done, it doesn't have that spirit. You feel it right away. It feels sort of dead. A
yes.
very commercial piece. I mean, it might be very really sellable. The
Hmm.
commercial piece, well done and sellable. It might be something that's decorative. That's fine. But then there's another thing that that great art has that differentiates it from other visual works, and that is that spiritual, ineffable quality that just takes your breath away. When you look at it, it pulls you into it almost like knocks your feet from out from under you, and you have to sit down.
Hmm.
And if you're sensitive, you can encounter it.
Hmm.
You know?
Wow, that's great. Okay, so we have approached our last question. Um, Looking ahead, what themes or project are you excited to explore in your future work? Is there anything that we should keep a lookout for, any audiences? Please tell us.
You talking about shows, or you talking about paintings that I want to do?
Paintings that you want to do, projects that you want to do, approach. It can be
I
both, it can be one or the other.
Well, I always hope. Well, projects, you mean shows, you mean exhibitions, or you mean projects meaning my work?
Let's do projects meaning your work.
Um, the way I approach my work is, like I think I mentioned to you before, is I am very I want to be a blank slate about what I'm going to be doing next. And I don't know why I approach it that way, but that's the way I feel comfortable doing it. I want to see something and be surprised by what I'm seeing, and let that moment, that intuition, that spirit, that art spirit. Robert Henry, who was the great teacher of the Ashcan school, he calls it the art spirit. I want that art spirit to take me. And I know who knows what it'll be. I think it'll be another series of figurative paintings. It could be it could be leading to a big painting, or it could be a bunch of watercolors. I don't know. But I enjoy the fact that I don't know.
Yes.
And I want to not know.
Yes. Hmm.
I don't want to know. I want it to be told to me. And then once it's told to me, I want to say, oh, okay, that's what I should be doing.
Hmm.
And I've gotten to this point where I'm open enough uh, to be pulled and to want to follow that pull. As far as showing, I wish I could say that I'm showing all over the place. But that's the shows come and they go and they're fits and starts.
Hmm.
Um, I would like to have uh, a one-person show gallery, in New York. That would be great, but that's not right now. That's not in the cards. Um, so it's something that I work towards, and I hope to get into a juried show here and there, and of course, I'm always publishing my work on Instagram, so people can follow me on Instagram and see what I'm doing, which is I'm very prolific.
Yes. Hmm.
But um, you know, last year I was surprised by the shows I got into. I got into a couple of really terrific shows, and I was very grateful. This year, this is a really good opportunity. They came totally out of the blue. I didn't expect it. You guys contacted me. So I didn't even know you existed. So that was something that was wonderful. So who knows? I mean, something can come from this that emerges that other people see and they may want to
Yes.
show a piece. Or I've entered into several juried shows. I haven't heard back. I might not get into one. I might get into none. I might get into one. Who knows?
Hmm.
But
Well, we
that's
sorry. Well, we believe in your work, so we're glad to have you here with us.
oh,
Um,
thank you.
I really love your paintings. They're really great, especially after hearing so much about your journey and how you approach paintings. It's really, really great to hear about.
Oh, thank you.
Hmm. No problem. Well, if unless you have something else to say, I think that's all the questions that I have for you today.
Yeah, no, I think I've said a lot. I think
Thank you. I enjoyed listening to it all. For any of the viewers watching, please join us for our opening virtual reception on Thursday, September 5th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. and an in-person reception on Friday, September 6th from 6:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.